Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Call from Hell. The scorching Iraqi sun beat down on Forward Operating Base Delta as Staff Sergeant Ramon Moody cleaned his rifle for the third time that morning. Sweat dripped from his weathered face onto the weapon stock, a face that had seen too much combat, too many friends lost to IEDs and sniper fire. At 34, Ramon carried himself with the lethal precision of a man who'd spent 12 years in special forces, his muscular frame moving with calculated efficiency even in the simplest tasks. The satellite phone's shrill ring cut through the desert silence like a blade. Ramon's ice-blue eyes narrowed as he recognized the international code. Personal calls to the FOB were rare and usually meant bad news. Staff Sergeant Moody. He answered, his voice carrying the gravelly tone that made enemy combatants think twice. "Sir, this is Detective Lewis Harrington with the Denver Police Department. I'm calling about your son, Timothy." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Ramon's grip tightened on the phone until his knuckles went white. "What about my son?" "Sir, I'm afraid Timothy is missing. He was last seen 3 days ago with your brother-in-law, Damon Booker. We've been searching 3 days." Ramon's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper that made his fellow soldiers look up from their equipment. "Why wasn't I called immediately?" Detective Harrington cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Sir, your wife initially told us Timothy was staying with friends. She only contacted us yesterday when she claimed he didn't come home." Ramon's jaw clenched. Alexis, his beautiful, manipulative wife who'd married him for the military benefits and steady paycheck, not for love. He'd suspected for months that something was wrong. The way she avoided his video calls, the hollow sound in her voice when they did speak, the expensive purchases that appeared on their credit card statements. "What else?" Ramon demanded. "Sir, we found evidence in Mr. Booker's vehicle. Blood evidence. We're running tests now, but..." The phone slipped from Ramon's numb fingers, clattering onto the metal table. Blood. His 8-year-old son's blood. Timothy, with his mother's blonde hair and his father's determined spirit, the only pure thing left in Ramon's increasingly dark world. Sergeant First Class Grant Frank approached cautiously. "Moody? You good, brother?" Ramon's eyes had gone dead, the transformation so complete that Grant instinctively stepped back. In 12 years of military service, Grant had never seen anything more terrifying than the look that crossed Ramon Moody's face in that moment. "Pack your gear, soldier," came the voice of Major Timothy Bolton from behind them. The base commander had obviously been monitoring the call. "You're going home. Emergency leave approved." Ramon retrieved the phone with mechanical precision. Detective Harrington was still talking, his voice tinny and distant through the speaker. "Your brother-in-law has a history of domestic violence and drug-related offenses. He's been in and out of the system for years. Your wife never mentioned." Ramon ended the call without another word. He stood slowly, his mind already shifting into operational mode. The same cold, calculating mindset that had made him one of the military's most efficient killers was now focused on a single objective: finding out what happened to his son and making everyone responsible pay in ways they couldn't imagine. As he walked toward his quarters to pack, fragments of conversations from his last leave echoed in his memory. Alexis whispering on the phone late at night. Damon's frequent visits when he thought Ramon wasn't watching. The way Timothy had seemed nervous around his uncle, trying to stay close to his father during those final days before deployment. Ramon had ignored the signs, trusted his wife, believed in the sanctity of family. That trust was about to become the most expensive mistake of several people's lives. Chapter 2. Ghosts in the Machine. The military transport touched down at Denver International Airport 18 hours later. Ramon moved through the terminal like a predator among sheep, his single duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He'd used the flight to make calls, pull strings, and activate networks built over a decade of covert operations. His first stop wasn't home. Instead, he drove his old Ford pickup to a storage unit on the outskirts of the city, one that Alexis knew nothing about. Inside, wrapped in moisture-proof containers, was everything a special operations veteran might need for off-the-books work. Untraceable weapons, surveillance equipment, and enough cash to disappear for months if necessary. Ramon's phone buzzed with a text from Detective Harrington. Need to debrief you ASAP. Come to station when you land. He ignored it. The police would follow procedures, process evidence, build a case that might take months to resolve. Ramon had learned in places like Afghanistan and Syria that sometimes justice required more direct methods. His second stop was a bar called Murphy's Tavern, where Jerry Singh waited in a corner booth. Jerry was thin and nervous-looking, the kind of man who blended into backgrounds and saw everything. He'd been Ramon's intelligence source during his gang infiltration days before enlisting, and he still had his ear to the street. Ramon. Jerry's voice was barely above a whisper. Man, I heard about Timothy. I'm sorry. What do you know? Ramon slid into the booth, his pale eyes fixed on Jerry's face. Your wife's been running around for months. Started right after your deployment. But Ramon. Jerry swallowed hard. It's not what you think. Explain. It's her brother, Damon. They've been together. Like together. And that's not even the worst part. Ramon's expression never changed, but the temperature at the table seemed to drop 10 degrees. Continue. They've been planning something. Talking about starting fresh, getting rid of complications. Your boy Timothy. Jerry's voice trailed off. My son isn't a complication, Ramon said quietly. He's 8 years old. I know, man. That's why I'm telling you this. Damon's been talking to some real bad people. Dealers, enforcers. Word is they were supposed to make Timothy disappear permanently, make it look like an accident or kidnapping. Ramon absorbed this information with the clinical detachment he'd learned in interrogation training. His wife wasn't just cheating. She was planning to murder their son to clear the way for her incestuous relationship with her brother. The betrayal cut deeper than any combat wound he'd ever received. Where's Timothy now? Ramon asked. That's the thing. Nobody knows. Damon was supposed to handle it 3 days ago, but something went wrong. There was a struggle in his car, blood everywhere. But no body, no witnesses. Damon's been hiding out ever since. Where? Jerry pulled out a piece of paper with an address. Old Warehouse District. But Ramon, the place is probably armed. Damon's scared, and scared animals are dangerous. Ramon pocketed the address. What else? Your wife's been telling people you're not coming back. That you got killed in action and the military just hasn't notified next of kin yet. She's already been to see a lawyer about life insurance. The final piece clicked into place. Alexis and Damon hadn't just planned to kill Timothy. They'd planned to stage Ramon's death too, probably during his next deployment. A perfect little incestuous family with no loose ends and a substantial military life insurance payout. Ramon stood to leave, but Jerry grabbed his arm. Man, whatever you're planning, be careful. These aren't just cheaters, they're killers. And they've got nothing left to lose. Ramon looked down at Jerry's hand until the smaller man released his grip. Neither do I. Chapter 3. The Hunter's Moon. Ramon's childhood home sat on 2 acres outside Denver, far enough from neighbors to ensure privacy. He pulled into the driveway at 11 p.m., noting immediately that Alexis's BMW was gone. The house was dark except for a single light in the master bedroom. He entered through the back door using his key, moving through the familiar spaces with the silence of a man trained in close-quarters combat. Every room held memories of better times. Timothy's artwork on the refrigerator, family photos on the mantelpiece, the lingering scent of Alexis's expensive perfume. The bedroom door was closed. Ramon could hear voices, Alexis talking to someone on the phone, her tone casual and unconcerned. He placed his ear against the door. Told you, the military will handle the notification. We just have to wait a few more days. Then I can start the Grieving Widow Act. Her laugh was cold, brittle. No, Damon's handling the Timothy situation. It'll look like he ran away, got picked up by some pervert. These things happen all the time. Ramon's hand moved to the door handle, but he stopped himself. Not yet. He needed more information, needed to understand the full scope of their betrayal. The insurance money will set us up nicely. And Ramon's death benefits, plus the house. She paused. What do you mean you can't find the boy? How hard is it to dispose of an 8-year-old? Ramon backed away from the door, his operational mind cataloging details. Alexis was talking to someone else, not Damon. The plan was bigger than just the two of them. And Timothy, his son, was still alive, still out there somewhere. He retreated to his study and opened the safe hidden behind his military commendations. Inside were documents, photographs, and a USB drive containing every piece of intelligence he'd gathered over the years. Ramon had always been thorough, always prepared for the worst-case scenario. He just never imagined it would involve his own family. The laptop hummed to life as he accessed encrypted files and activated dormant surveillance programs. Within minutes, he had location data on every phone number in Alexis's contact list, financial records going back 2 years, and security footage from local businesses near Damon's last known address. What he found made his blood run cold. The affair had started 6 months ago, but the planning went back even further. Alexis had been researching military death benefits, life insurance policies, and legal procedures for missing children. She consulted with lawyers about custody issues in the event of spousal death. Most damning of all, she purchased a large life insurance policy on Timothy just 3 weeks before Ramon's deployment. His son wasn't just an obstacle to their relationship. He was worth more dead than alive. Ramon's hands trembled slightly as he closed the laptop. In all his years of combat, facing terrorists and enemy combatants, he'd never felt the pure, crystalline rage that now filled his chest. These people had betrayed not just him, but an innocent child. His child. The bedroom had gone quiet. Ramon moved to the window and watched Alexis's BMW pull into the driveway. 2 figures got out, Alexis and a man he didn't recognize. Not Damon. Someone new. Ramon faded back into the shadows of his study as the front door opened. He could hear Alexis's voice, higher now, nervous. Told you he's supposed to be dead. The notification should have come through by now. Well, he's not dead, the man replied in a gravelly voice. Because Jerry Singh just called Damon. Your husband's back in town, and he's asking questions. There was a long silence. Then Alexis spoke again, her voice now carrying the sharp edge of panic. Then we need to move up the timeline. How quickly can you make Ramon disappear? Tonight, if necessary. But it'll be messy. And expensive. I don't care about messy. I care about permanent. Ramon smiled in the darkness, a cold, predatory expression that would have terrified anyone who saw it. His wife had just signed her own death warrant, and she didn't even know it. But first, he had to find Timothy. Everything else could wait until his son was safe. As the voices moved toward the living room, Ramon slipped out the back door and into the night. He had work to do, and dawn was still hours away. Chapter 4. Into the Abyss. The warehouse district of Denver was a graveyard of industrial ambition, rusted buildings and broken dreams stretching toward the mountains like metal tombstones. Ramon parked his truck 3 blocks away and moved through the shadows with practiced stealth, night vision goggles turning the darkness into a green-tinted world of possibilities. Damon Booker's hideout occupied the 3rd floor of a converted textile factory. Ramon spent 2 hours conducting surveillance, mapping guard positions, and identifying entry points. There were 4 men inside, Damon plus 3 others who looked like street muscle. All armed, all nervous. Through the thermal scope he'd retrieved from his storage unit, Ramon could see heat signatures moving inside the building. One smaller signature in a back room, motionless for long periods. His heart hammered against his ribs. Timothy. The entry was textbook Special Forces, silent, swift, and devastating. Ramon bypassed the street-level guards through a maintenance shaft, emerging in the 2nd floor electrical room. The building's power grid was decades old, easily manipulated by someone with his training. When the lights went out, panic erupted on the 3rd floor. Shouts, running footsteps, the distinctive sound of weapons being readied in the dark. Ramon smiled and activated his night vision. The first guard died without knowing what hit him, a knife between the ribs, quick and silent. The second managed to scream before Ramon's garrote cut off his voice permanently. By the time the emergency lighting kicked in, 2 men were dead and Ramon was a ghost moving through their midst. Damon Booker huddled in the main room with his last remaining bodyguard, a nervous young man who kept pointing his pistol at every shadow. Ramon studied them through a gap in the wall, noting Damon's deteriorated condition. The man was sweating despite the cool air, his hands shaking, eyes darting constantly toward the back room where Timothy was being held. "He's here," Damon whispered. "I can feel it. That psycho's here." "Who's here?" the bodyguard asked. "Excellent," replied a gravelly voice Ramon recognized as Vernon Knowles. "And the boy?" "Disposed of as requested. Damon handled it yesterday." Ramon's jaw clenched. They thought Timothy was dead. "Any complications?" This from Carl Bates, the lawyer. "None." The scene was staged to look like a kidnapping. Blood evidence will lead police to suspect human trafficking. They'll search for months, find nothing, and eventually close the case. "And Damon? He's become a liability," Knowles said. "Nervous, unstable, using too much product. We'll need to clean up that loose end before he talks to anyone." Ramon filed away this information. They were planning to kill Damon too, probably within days. The insurance companies will need death certificates for both husband and son before releasing funds, Bates explained. Military death benefits are automatic, but the private policies require documentation. "How long?" Alexis asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Then you'll have access to everything. "And after that?" Knowles chuckled, a sound like gravel in a cement mixer. "After that, you disappear. New identity, new life. Someplace warm with no extradition treaties. What about you two?" "We take our cuts and move on to the next client. This business model is very profitable." Ramon had heard enough. These weren't just criminals. They were serial killers operating an insurance murder business. Alexis wasn't their first client, and she wouldn't be their last. But she would be their final one. Ramon retreated through the ventilation system, his mind already formulating a plan. Alexis, Knowles, and Bates thought they were predators. They were about to learn what it felt like to be prey. At 4 p.m., Ramon's phone rang with a call from Detective Harrington. "Mr. Moody? I'm sorry to inform you that we found more blood evidence at the warehouse where your brother-in-law was hiding. We believe Timothy may have been seriously injured." "I understand," Ramon replied, injecting just the right amount of grief into his voice. "There's something else. Damon Booker was found dead this morning. Single gunshot to the head, execution style. This case just became a homicide investigation." Ramon smiled grimly. Knowles was already cleaning up loose ends, just as predicted. "Detective, I need to ask a favor. My wife is not handling this well. Could you hold off on notifying her about Damon's death for 24 hours? I want to be there when she hears the news." "Of course, Mr. Moody. Take all the time you need." Ramon ended the call and returned to his planning. Damon was dead, which simplified things. 3 targets remained: Alexis, Knowles, and Bates. All of them thought Ramon was dead and Timothy was disposed of. They were about to discover how wrong they could be. The hunter had become the hunted, and the game was about to begin in earnest. Chapter 6: Sins of the Father. Ramon spent the evening teaching Timothy how to use the cabin security system. His son was resilient, a trait inherited from both sides of the family, though Ramon doubted Alexis's resilience would serve her well in the coming days. "Dad, why did Mom want to hurt me?" Timothy asked as they sat by the fireplace. Ramon had been dreading this question. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that his mother tried to have him killed for money? "Sometimes people make bad choices, son. Very bad choices. Your mother, she's sick. She needs help that I can't give her. Are you going to help her anyway?" Ramon looked into his son's innocent eyes, eyes that still held love for the woman who tried to murder him. "I'm going to make sure she never hurts anyone again." That's a different kind of help. The next morning brought news that Vernon Knowles had been found dead in his office, apparent suicide. A note confessed to kidnapping and murdering Timothy Moody, then killing Damon Booker to cover his tracks. The note apologized to the families and cited overwhelming guilt as the reason for taking his own life. Ramon read the news report with professional admiration. Someone was very good at staging crime scenes. Probably Alexis herself. He'd underestimated her operational capabilities. His phone rang. Detective Harrington again. "Mr. Moody, I have good news and bad news. The good news is we've solved your son's case. Vernon Knowles left a full confession before killing himself. And the bad news? I'm sorry, but based on the confession and evidence, we have to presume Timothy is deceased. Knowles detailed the disposal method. We may never recover the body. I understand, Detective. Thank you for everything you've done. After ending the call, Ramon sat in silence for several minutes. Alexis had just made her final move, eliminating Knowles and positioning herself as the grieving widow and mother. She probably thought she was free and clear. She was wrong. That afternoon, Ramon drove to Denver to conduct final surveillance on his targets. Carl Bates was in his office, conducting business as usual. Alexis was at home, playing the part of the devastated mother for the neighbors who brought casseroles and offered condolences. Ramon watched her through binoculars from a concealed position across the street. She moved through the house like an actress rehearsing for a performance, touching Timothy's toys with theatrical sadness, sitting by the window with a handkerchief pressed to her eyes. It was a masterful performance. She'd probably practiced in the mirror. At 6 p.m., Alexis left the house dressed in black, driving toward downtown. Ramon followed at a distance, watching her enter the same high-rise where Bates had his office. But instead of going to the 20th floor, she stopped at the 15th. The directory listed it as a private medical practice. Dr. Gustavo Quick, plastic surgeon. Ramon felt the pieces clicking into place. Alexis wasn't just planning to disappear with the insurance money. She was planning to become someone else entirely. New face, new identity, new life. Through the building's security cameras, which he'd hacked hours earlier, Ramon watched Alexis meet with Dr. Quick. They discussed surgical procedures, healing times, and payment schedules. The doctor showed her computer simulations of how she would look after the operations. The woman in the simulations bore no resemblance to the Alexis Moody who'd married a young soldier 12 years ago. Ramon made his decision. The surgical consultation lasted 45 minutes. When Alexis left the building, she found a note on her windshield. Your husband and son are waiting for you at home. Come alone, where the police will receive very interesting evidence about insurance fraud and conspiracy to commit murder. A friend. 20 minutes later, Alexis burst through the front door of their house, her composure finally cracking. Hello, Alexis, Ramon said from the living room sofa. You look surprised to see me. She stood frozen in the doorway, her face cycling through shock, terror, and calculation. Ramon? But you're dead. The military said. The military says a lot of things. Sometimes they're even true. Ramon gestured to the chair across from him. Sit down. We need to talk. Where's Timothy? The question came out as a whisper. Safe, which is more than you can say for yourself. Alexis slowly approached the chair, but remained standing. I don't know what you think you know, but I know everything. Ramon's voice cut through her protests like a blade. The affair with your brother. The insurance policies. The murder plot. Vernon Knowles. Carl Bates. All of it. Her facade crumbled completely. Damon said you were dead. He showed me the official notification. Damon's dead. Knowles is dead. You killed them both to cover your tracks. Ramon leaned forward slightly. Very professional work, by the way. I'm impressed. You can't prove anything. I don't need to prove anything to a court of law, Alexis. I'm not a police officer anymore. The implication hung in the air between them like a loaded weapon. What do you want? She asked finally. I want you to understand something, Ramon said quietly. You tried to murder my son. Our son. For money. There is no forgiveness for that. There is no redemption. There is only consequence. Ramon, please. The consequence, he continued as if she hadn't spoken, is that you're going to confess everything to the authorities. You're going to plead guilty. You're going to serve your time in prison, however long that might be. And if I refuse? Ramon's smile was colder than Arctic wind. Then I'll remind you that I've spent 12 years learning how to make people disappear without a trace. And unlike you, I've never failed at it. The choice was simple, life in prison or no life at all. Alexis chose prison. Chapter 7, The Reckoning. The confession took 3 hours to record. Alexis detailed every aspect of the conspiracy while Ramon operated the camera, ensuring that her admission was legally admissible. She spoke of the affair with Damon, the recruitment by Vernon Knowles, the planning stages of the murders, and her own role in executing the plan. What emerged was a portrait of systematic evil that went far beyond insurance fraud. Knowles had been running his operation for years, targeting military families because their deaths were easier to stage overseas. Alexis wasn't his first client. She was number 7 in a series of cases stretching back to 2019. How many children? Ramon asked during one particularly damning revelation. 12, Alexis whispered. Maybe more. Knowles kept records, but he destroyed them after each job. Ramon felt sick. They hadn't just been planning to murder Timothy. They'd been part of a systematic operation that had killed at least 12 other children for insurance money. Where Knowles' records? Safe deposit box. First National Bank, downtown branch. Box 847. Key. Alexis reached in her purse and handed over a small brass key. I was supposed to clean it out after everything's settled. Ramon pocketed the key. Those records would implicate dozens of people in multiple murders. The FBI would be very interested in that evidence. One more question, Ramon said as the confession wound down. Did you ever love Timothy? Even a little? Alexis looked directly into the camera for the first time in hours. No, he was always your child. Never mind. I tolerated him because he was part of the package. But love him? No. The honesty was more devastating than any lie could have been. Ramon stopped the recording and uploaded the file to an encrypted server accessible to law enforcement. Then he made a series of phone calls to Detective Harrington, to the FBI, to the Military Criminal Investigation Division. By morning, the story would be international news. By evening, dozens of other cases would be reopened. The Knowles conspiracy would unravel completely, bringing justice to families who'd never known their loved ones were murdered. What happens now? Alexis asked as Ramon prepared to leave. Now you wait for the police. They'll be here within the hour. And Timothy? Timothy will never see you again. He'll never know you tried to kill him. As far as he's concerned, you died in a car accident while I was overseas. Clean, simple, merciful. You're going to lie to him? I'm going to protect him from the truth until he's old enough to handle it. That's what fathers do. Ramon walked toward the door, then stopped. One final thing, Alexis. In prison, you'll meet other women who've hurt children. They don't tend to live very long. I thought you should know that. He left her sitting in the living room of what had been their home, surrounded by the wreckage of a life she'd destroyed for money. 45 minutes later, police cars filled the driveway. Chapter 8, Clean Slate. The media frenzy lasted for weeks. The Knowles conspiracy dominated headlines across the country as investigators uncovered a network of murder-for-hire operations targeting military families. Alexis Moody became the face of evil, a mother who tried to kill her own child for insurance money. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Carl Bates received 25 years for his role in the conspiracy. 7 other accomplices were arrested in connection with a broader operation. Ramon and Timothy watched the sentencing from the cabin in the mountains, far from the media circus. Timothy still believed his mother had died in a car accident. The boy was healing, physically and emotionally, but the scars would take years to fade completely. Dad, are we going to stay here forever? Timothy asked one evening as they sat by the lake behind the cabin. Would you like to? I like it here. It's peaceful, and nobody tries to hurt us. Ramon nodded. The cabin could become their permanent home. He had enough money saved to live comfortably, and Timothy could be homeschooled or attend a small local school. A quiet life, far from the complexities of the world that had produced people like Alexis and Vernon Knowles. But peace had a price. Ramon's phone rang constantly with calls from former military contacts, from law enforcement agencies, from private contractors who needed someone with his particular skills. The world was full of people who hurt innocent children, and Ramon Moody had proven very effective at stopping them. Timothy, he said finally, how would you feel about helping other kids who are in trouble? What do you mean? I mean using what we've learned to make sure other families don't go through what we went through. Timothy considered this seriously. He was mature beyond his years now, having seen the worst that human nature could offer. Would it be dangerous? Sometimes. But we be careful. We be smart. And we'd only go after people who really deserve it. Like Mom did. Ramon winced at the casual way his son referenced Alexis. To Timothy, his mother's death was just a fact of life now, no more emotionally charged than the weather. Like your mother did, Ramon confirmed. Then yes, I want to help. That night, after Timothy was asleep, Ramon made a series of phone calls. By morning, he had 3 active cases. Missing children, suspected murders, families destroyed by people who thought they were untouchable. The first case involved Margie Maldonado, a woman in Phoenix who'd taken out large insurance policies on her stepchildren and was planning a tragic accident during their summer vacation. The second was Salvatore Sanchez, a corrupt social worker in Miami who was selling children to human traffickers. The third was a ring of foster parents in Seattle who were collecting government checks for children they'd killed years ago. All of them thought they were safe. All of them were wrong. Ramon Moody had found his new mission in life, protecting children from the monsters who wore human faces. He was very good at it, and the world needed people who were willing to do what was necessary when the system failed. The hunter had become the protector, and there was no shortage of prey. Chapter 9. Blood and Redemption. 5 years later, the compound in rural Montana looked like a hunting lodge from the outside. Rustic cabins, dense forest, crystal clear lake. From the inside, it was something else entirely. A training facility, safe house, and operational headquarters rolled into one. Timothy Moody, now 13, could field strip an assault rifle in 40 seconds, speak 3 languages fluently, and hack into most civilian computer systems. He could also bake chocolate chip cookies, maintain a 4.0 GPA in his online coursework, and beat his father at chess 2 games out of 3. Ramon watched his son through the kitchen window as Timothy practiced defensive driving techniques in the compound's obstacle course. The boy had grown tall and lean, with his father's ice blue eyes and his mother's analytical mind, though he'd learned to use that analytical nature for protection rather than predation. They'd saved 43 children in 5 years. The Maldonado case had been resolved with Margie suffering a tragic accident of her own, a gas leak explosion that looked completely natural to investigators. Salvatore Sanchez had been found dead in his office, an apparent heart attack brought on by stress. The Seattle foster ring had simply vanished one night, their bodies never recovered. Ramon's network had grown to include former military personnel, reformed criminals, and families who'd lost children to predators. They operated outside the law when necessary, within it when possible, and always with surgical precision. The latest case file sat open on Ramon's desk. Diane Clay, a kindergarten teacher in Denver who was suspected of abusing her students. The police had investigated twice, but couldn't build a case that would stand up in court. The children were too young to testify effectively, the evidence too circumstantial. But Ramon had learned that courts weren't the only venue for justice. His encrypted phone buzzed with a message from Grant Frank, now retired and working as the compound security chief. Clay confirmed. Multiple victims, ready for extraction. Ramon closed the file and checked his watch. Timothy would be finished with driving practice in 10 minutes. They could be in Denver by tonight, have Clay neutralized by tomorrow morning, and be back home in time for Timothy's birthday on Thursday. Dad! Timothy's voice carried across the compound as he parked the modified Jeep with military precision. We've got movement on the perimeter cameras. Ramon's hand moved instinctively to the pistol on his hip as he pulled up the security feed. 3 black SUVs were approaching on the access road, official vehicles with government plates. Federal, Ramon announced into his radio. All personnel to standby positions. The compound had been designed for exactly this scenario. Hidden exits, emergency protocols, evidence destruction procedures. Ramon had always known that eventually someone would come asking questions about the high-profile deaths that seemed to follow him around the country. The SUVs stopped at the main gate. Federal agents emerged, FBI by their bearing and equipment. The lead agent approached the intercom with the confident stride of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Ramon Moody? Agent Tamara Wise, FBI. We need to talk. Ramon activated the intercom. About what? About Alexis Moody. She was found dead in her cell yesterday morning. Apparent suicide. Ramon felt no grief, no satisfaction, just a sense of completion. Alexis had finally paid the ultimate price for her crimes. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said through the intercom, "but I don't see how that concerns me. My wife died in a car accident 5 years ago. Mr. Moody, we know who you are and what you've been doing. The question is whether we're going to work together or work against each other." Ramon considered this. The FBI wouldn't have come alone if they were planning to arrest him. This felt like recruitment. "Timothy, activate Protocol 7, he said into his radio. Protocol 7 would scrub their computer systems and prepare the compound for immediate evacuation, if necessary. He opened the gate. Agent Wise was a serious woman in her 40s, the kind of federal agent who'd spent her career building cases against people who hurt children. She entered the compound's main building with professional wariness, her backup agents flanking her but not drawing weapons. "Impressive setup," she said, noting the surveillance equipment and tactical gear. "Very professional." "I like to be prepared," Ramon replied. "What do you want, Agent Wise?" "I want to offer you a job." Timothy entered the room carrying a tray of coffee, playing the part of the innocent teenager perfectly. Agent Wise's eyes softened slightly when she saw him, a reminder that everything Ramon had done was for children like Timothy. "What kind of job?" Ramon asked. "The kind that lets you keep doing what you're already doing, but with official backing. Budget, resources, legal protection." Agent Wise pulled out a tablet and showed him a presentation. The FBI was forming a new task force focused on crimes against children. Cases that fell through the cracks of normal law enforcement. Cases where traditional methods weren't effective. "We need people who are willing to go places we can't go, do things we can't do. People who understand that sometimes justice requires more direct methods." Ramon studied the proposal. Official sanction for his operations. Government resources. Legal immunity for actions taken in the course of duty. And Timothy? Full scholarship to any university he chooses, followed by a position with the Bureau if he's interested. His skills are impressive for someone his age. Timothy looked at his father. In his eyes, Ramon saw the same cold intelligence that had helped them survive 5 years of hunting predators. His son had grown up in this world, understood its necessities, accepted its moral complexities. "What do you think, son?" "I think," Timothy said carefully, "that 43 children aren't enough. There are thousands more out there who need help." Agent Wise smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." Ramon made his decision. The war against people who hurt children would continue, but now it would have the full weight of the federal government behind it. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow. We have a case in Las Vegas. A daycare operator who's been selling access to the children in her care. Local police have been investigating for months without results." "Understood." Ramon stood and extended his hand. "Agent Wise, welcome to the war." As they shook hands, Ramon caught Timothy's reflection in the window. His son was smiling, not with the innocent joy of childhood, but with the cold satisfaction of a predator who just found new hunting grounds. Some people were born to protect the innocent. Some were born to hunt the monsters who threatened them. The Moody family had found their calling. 3 months later, a daycare operator in Las Vegas was found dead in her office, an apparent overdose. The children in her care were relocated to safer facilities, and the trafficking ring she'd been part of was completely dismantled. The investigation noted that the woman had been under surveillance by federal agents, but those agents had no knowledge of how she'd obtained the drugs that killed her.